Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're listening, and welcome back to Bots and Beyond. There's another great guest this week, a friend to the firm, personal friend of mine, certainly not a stranger to many of those listening as well, I am sure, Mr. Will Harris.
Hey, nice to be here, Wayne.
And I say friend of the firm. Will and I affectionately refer to ourselves as the Ant and Dec of ISG automation until he left me. Thankfully, he didn't leave us completely in the lurch. And it's great to have Will on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about Will's career and what he's doing now post ISG automation. But I know you very well, Mr. Harris. I'm sure the audience do. But for those that don't, we'd love to get your who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it. Intro.
Hey, thanks, Wayne. Always a pleasure to sit down and have a chat. And thanks for inviting me onto Bots and Beyond. I've listened to plenty of them and finally get to be on one of these now. So for those of you listening who don't know me, I'm Will Harris. I'm currently the Group Chief Digital Officer of an alternate asset investor services firm called IQEQ. I'll explain a bit more about IQEQ in due course. So I had a short-lived career in the military, straight out of school, before going to university, qualifying as a lawyer. Didn't really go into practice. I then turned my sights to management consulting, where I spent the vast majority of my career, later on getting into advanced tech consulting and organizational change, really, which led me to a tech startup or a tech consulting startup and into the world of automation, before going to ISG automation, where I got to know Wayne, and then moving to buy side and becoming the CDO over here at IQEQ. Why do I do it? That's a heck of a question, Wayne. I can't say I've put much thought into it previously. I enjoy it. I enjoy invoking change. I enjoy identifying new trends and opportunities and driving those into an organization. And the Chief Digital Officer is a fairly new role, really. I think if we look pre-2010, there were probably only a dozen or so in the world. I mean, now there's probably several hundred, if not several thousand. It's becoming more common within the enterprise. But it's a really good opportunity to be at the nexus of business, technology, and be driving our capability forward by applying advanced technology into the organization.
Wow, what a background. Now, obviously, I knew all of this. So we now know a little bit more about yourself, and there's loads that we can dig into there. One of the things I was always very fond of was your ability to apply a legal mindset when we were reviewing things like statements of work. And I do remember some very colourful negotiations where your background just came and that was just unreal in certain negotiations. You're now with IQEQ. Talk to us a little bit about IQEQ. What was it about IQEQ that enabled, basically that took you away from me? If you can just dig into it, what was so special about them, or what was wrong with me?
What was wrong with you, Wayne? I don't think we have long enough on this podcast, to be fair, mate. No, I've long considered where my career was going to, and it perhaps came a little earlier than I expected, but the opportunity to take a senior leadership role inside a rapidly growing organization within the financial services industry, specifically in that investor sector and investor services. So probably a bit more about who IQEQ are. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we're an investor services organization. So we support investors in running their funds and the administration of their investments. We're now at about 3,600 staff across 24 locations. We've got over $500 billion of asset under management and a rapidly growing outfit. We've made several acquisitions in the past few years. The brands only existed for 3 years. There were some key legacy organizations that came together and created what is now IQEQ. And we're on this very exciting journey. Only 2 weeks ago, we closed an additional 1.3 billion euros in a continuation fund. So I expect that the coming year or two is going to be filled with excitement as we look at the market and find out ways of continuing our organic and non-organic growth.
Great. So that certainly helps fill in some of the blanks around IQEQ and the exciting opportunity you have there. Talk to us a little bit about the role then. So you briefly spoke about, the growing rise of the CDO, the Chief Digital Officer. I mean, how does that differ from, say, a CIO or a Chief Automation Officer, perhaps? Feels like you're somewhere kind of in the middle. Is that right?
Yeah, interesting one, isn't it? I certainly didn't go out looking for a chief digital role. It was sort of how it came together, really. The CDO role, in my mind, is quite an interesting one. I think it's the intersection, the true intersection between business operations and technology. As you know, Wayne, from my background, I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool technologist. I'm a commercial guy who's come into technology and looks at the application of it rather than the creation of it. So I always feel more attuned to the ops or business side of the coin. But that said, with the careers that we've had working together and prior to that, I certainly have a knowledge of technology and how to apply it, and can work closely with my colleagues across group technology and the CIO function and all the other pieces that exist there. To me, the essential element of the chief digital officer in any company is to move from that traditional CIO who's looking at automating existing things or optimizing current deliveries, creating systems of record and centralizing IT capability, into a more modern take of that, where we're looking at how do we transform business processes, moving to customer facing digital business models, really optimizing that experience for not just our customers, but also for our internal staff, and looking at the plethora of technologies that are available out there in order to support the team in what they're trying to achieve, but doing so from a customer or employee centric point of view rather than a technology centric point of view.
Great. I think that's all really, really insightful. What about end goals then? So, what would you say your kind of objectives, coming into this role over the next kind of couple of years? Where does automation fit in? Bearing in mind that's the last consulting industry that you came out. And what are those other aspects, outside of automation, that are really going to be key for you to be successful in this role?
Good questions, buddy. So end goal, objectives are pretty simple, right? We're a private equity owned organization. We've made lots of acquisitions. We have a fairly disparate technical estate, as you might imagine, lots of different systems, lots of different capabilities. My ultimate end goal is fairly simple. Through the application of digital technology, increase the performance of our top line. So drive additional revenues. And on the other side of the coin, through the application of digital technologies, augment our team in order to control the cost base and stretch EBITDA. So they're very much business-driven KPIs that I'm focused on at the highest level. Employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, innovation, all big parts of it. Now, as to the question about where is automation is a huge part of the role. It's probably the largest investment that I'm making, or one of the two largest investments that I'm making. And as you know, we're on the Automation Anywhere stack. We've had some good efforts in automating a few processes. We are leveraging some process intelligence technology to try and help us find additional opportunities alongside our business analysts. We have a very healthy pipeline, and we're really just getting to the point now where we're truly accelerating our automation program and moving it into scale. We've got our automation factory that we outsource to ISG to provide that to us, that is increasing the amount of build spots we have available. We anticipate we'll be pumping out. I hate processes as a metric, but to give it a size, we'll be putting out 40-ish, 50-ish processes a year. And they're sort of real processes, not little tasks. This will be proper end-to-end processes around fund financial statement creation or capital call or distribution notices or whatever it may be. The other elements then, if that's one leg of a multi-leg chair, the other elements that are really important to me, data extraction. So semantic analysis and semantic automation and document data extraction, really being able to understand the crux of what is in a document, extract the data you need and put that where it needs to go. Surrounding this then is intelligent workflow and orchestration, so we can get the right work to the right asset. And I say that because it might go to a person, it might go to a robot, it might go to something else. at the right time in order to get the right outcome for our clients. And then fairly boring, not a lot of people talk about it, but it's incredibly important to have strong document management capabilities in storage, access, search, especially search. You think about our business, we have tens of millions of documents transiting the business every year. We've got a lot that comes in by physical mail, a lot of email, of course. So anything to do with document extraction, management, workflow and orchestration is going to be really key to me.
Brilliant. So I can really see where automation fits in, but of course, automation is not necessarily the end goal. Like, it feels like the digitization of work, both from an ingestion and a monitoring and then a completion perspective, are kind of three separate areas where digitization is going to be incredibly important for you. And it sounds like, this isn't a quick, hey, 6 weeks, 8 weeks down the line, suddenly we transformed the business. This is a true transformation program, even though I guess it's using no code, low code technologies in the main.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot going on within our group engineering department where the sort of hardcore software coders live. And we've got our own software products that we do put out to the market as part of our services that we provide to our investor clients. But a huge amount of this really is about understanding what work needs to be done, where, when, and why, and then orchestrating the ability to do it. So if you think about the document data extraction piece, like for us, the adoption of true machine learning models, or AI, I'm doing air quotes, of course, is really critical. If I just do some simple maths for a minute, right? Let's say we have roughly 12,500 legal entities that we serve, so 12,500 clients in search of a better term. Each of those clients will have 3 to 5, so let's say 3, so we can go on the low end, different services from us. And each of those different services have around, the documents that we'd use would have around 12 to 15 variations, which means just on the most simple elements of working with our customers, if we do that 12,500 by 3 because of 3 different things, by 12 because of the variants, to 450,000. I can't create 450,000 document templates, right? In order to have an OCR engine or something, take the data out. So we really do have to look towards training models and NLP, NLU, semantic analysis in order to extract what we need. Now, throw in the fact that the data that we're using is some of the most secure data in the world. The importance on data security, cybersecurity, information security for us is beyond that I even saw in the Navy, right? With secure documents, we're very secure around it. So we run into a complication of how do I train a model if I don't want to exfiltrate the data into a SaaS solution that is doing this for me. But it's a really important element of the business in order to develop these models so that we can extract this data. And that's where a lot of our time is being spent at the moment, of course, supported by the automation program.
Okay, so what it sounds like is that you haven't taken the easy path by moving into industry. And actually, some of the challenges that you are having to overcome are often, what we would have seen as single pieces of a jigsaw. You are literally having to compile the entire thing versus a small aspect, which may be RPA, a small separate aspect, which may be IDP. Your role really is to bring all of these elements together and create a pretty picture. So at least I know you've taken on a big challenge, right? You haven't put yourself out to graze. You really have bitten off a lot here by moving into industry, which is good. Outside of that, I mean, what have been the things that you have been surprised about moving out of management consulting, which you have done for a long time, and into a business? What are the kind of key differences that you see? What are some of the positives? What are the things that maybe you didn't realize you were going to have to focus on as much as you have done? You kind of got any views on all of that?
Yeah, sure. So again, good question, Bud. Like, consulting into industry, it's a different beast, which is strange because I'm doing broadly the same thing, right? Like at ISG or previous, we would have teams of people doing multiple different projects, multiple different work streams, an individual client, and you'd be responsible as the program director or account lead or whatever it may be in order to bring all of these elements together. But it is different when it is to your own organization. So there's some of the positives for me, really being able to get under the hood in fundamentally understanding what the corporate strategy is, what the intents are, what the regional variants and requirements are for an organization, being able to see how pulling the automation lever affects something in the background that you might not be aware of if you're in a consulting gig and you have very stringent KPIs and success criteria you're working towards, right? Where in many ways, I have more freedom of operation because the business KPIs are so high, right? Make money, save money, that I don't have to worry too much in the micro as demonstrating, right, I spent £3 on this thing. It gave me £4 back. I should do more of it. I can aggregate that into more strategic points of view.
Great insights. And I guess last kind of question is thinking about technology more broad. And, this could be anything from metaverse to NFTs to, AI, whatever. I mean, what is, in or outside of work floating your boat? And you're not allowed to say cars.
Certainly not self-driving ones that would excite me. So from a work point of view, anything in that blockchain crypto space, we've just launched a couple crypto funds from our Dutch business, which we think we're quite early in the market in having the ability to support a crypto fund. And we're doing quite a lot of work in this space, certainly something worth watching. To me, it's in the broader, the advent of applied AI and how it is changing the world is really interesting. And some of that is in cars and my hobbies in this space. Well, watching a lot around what's happening in this space from a work point of view, really around semantics, NLU, both in the chatbot conversational AI space, but also in the data extraction space. As we create models that become more and more accurate, we can really change the way that we structure our businesses and therefore structure the products and services we provide to our clients. So that's a little less, sci-fi exciting to sit down and pontificate over a beer, but it's really important. And that's what I'm expecting in the next couple of years. The biggest thing for me, bar none, and it will come as no surprise to you, Wayne, is I think there is a real complication coming towards us in how we apply AI and what the impact is on the way we work and what the ethical implications are around whom is being impacted most by this technology and what actions we're taking in order to ensure that we're applying it in a consistent and fair manner. As long as we keep doing it right, it'll stay unregulated. My biggest fear is it gets regulated by a bunch of people who don't understand what it is, and we're hamstrung by regulation.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation before, and you kind of cite an example, and it's probably a medical one. So you've got somebody who owns the data, somebody who built the algorithm, somebody who implemented an end-to-end solution, and I think there's another aspect to that. Who owns the results?
Exactly.
So again, it's an interesting space, and I know you've thought a lot about this. I mean, how does that link into your doctorate? And talk to us a little bit more about that, because that's again another really interesting aspect to your current day job. Not only are you a CDO, studying for your doctorate right now, so and father of 2 children. So where do you get all the hours in the day to do all of that?
I don't sleep enough. I think that's what it is. But it's the doctorate. My thesis, the working title of my thesis is the impact of applied artificial intelligence on gender and ethnic diversity in the financial services industry. So it's quite a mouthful. But one of the things I learned when I started to go and do my doctorate of business administration is quite how narrow your research needs to be. My opening gambit was, I want to research applied AI. And to anybody listening who's an academic, they'll be chuckling to themselves about, this guy's an idiot. He did not know what he was getting himself in for. So what I'm finding with my research, and I'm not in any position to publish yet or to make, I make bold claims all the time. That's just because I like being provocative. But what we are identifying is even where the application of AI has been very well considered, it typically has a skewed negative impact on women and members of the BAME community. And there are a couple examples I can use without going too deep into the research that demonstrate this. So if we think a company typically has 7 ranks from graduate to CEO, and RPA, take that as an example, typically is applied in ranks 1 to 4. So even if you take an organization that's 55, 60%, 70% women, take the NHS, for example, and start driving automation into the business, then the roles you impact are typically where you have the highest concentration of gender and ethnic diversity, meaning you have a skewed negative impact. How many CEOs have we automated, and how many CEOs are men versus women versus when we look at the entry-level roles? The other example then would be if we created perfect self-driving cars, legislated they could work, the very first industry that's going to be heavily impacted by this would be taxi cab drivers, of which over 70% of taxi drivers in London are of non-white ethnicity. So again, we have a negative skewed impact on members of the BAME community. And that's not to say that the technology is racist. This is the paradox. The technology is not racist. The technology is absolutely equal or equitable, depending on how you set it up, but continuously has the potential for further negative skewed impact on gender and ethnic diversity. And I find it a really interesting paradox to try and research, to try and build an algorithm that helps us understand what the impact's going to be so that we can take the correct actions in order to rectify some of these unintended consequences.
Wow. And that is why you are studying a doctorate and I'm just hosting a podcast. Well, pleasure as always. And if you didn't know, obviously we are both very British, but we are actually recording this episode live from Dallas Tech. Will was able to just about get over to the States. So this is a first for a number of reasons. First time Will's been on the show. It's the first time I've actually recorded an episode face to face. And I'm fairly certain it's probably one of the first times that you've had two Brits on a podcast live from Dallas, Texas. So a number of different firsts there. So Will, thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate. And thank you all to listening to this week's Bots and Beyond. And we'll speak to you all in a few weeks.